the past 12 months, my best friend Francesco and I made over $148,000 in net revenue just by sharing our passion for music production with the world. That's over $12,000 a month with margins above 80%. But just a few years ago, I was living in Amsterdam, stuck in jobs I wasn't passionate about. I was feeling stressed and unfulfilled, and I dreamed of making a living doing something that actually gave me purpose, that I cared about, and that was actually mine. But I had no idea how to make that a reality. So I made a decision, and Francesco and I started sharing everything we knew about music production through content. And what we discovered over the years is that it doesn't matter what your skill is. If you can genuinely help people with it, you can build a real business around it. So in this video, I'll walk you through the exact 3 steps that took us from zero to building a profitable 6-figure business. If you have any kind of skill and you want to turn that skill into income, you will understand why this can apply to you as well. Now, before getting started, I want to be honest with you because this whole thing did not happen overnight. It took us 5 years to get to this point. And I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you that you're going to make millions in 30 days, although a lot of people probably want you to believe that. One, because it's simply not true, and secondly, it's also not what we've achieved. Because building a business from your skill actually requires time and a lot of work, and it requires a real desire to provide value to others. But the truth is that most people simply aren't willing to commit to that, and I'd rather tell you this up front instead of wasting your own time. That being said, let's start from the beginning. All right, step 1, everything starts here. Acquire and develop your skill. Most people never take this step not because they lack the skills, but rather because they completely underestimate the value of what they already know. What feels obvious to you could be useful to somebody else, but instead of sharing it, most people keep it to themselves. They tell themselves that they're not expert enough and that they don't have the authority to teach anyone anything. And what ends up happening is that they never start. They keep those skills hidden, unaware that somebody else is looking for exactly that. And that's a problem because we live in a time where the infrastructure to share your skills with anyone anywhere exists and it's free. But none of that matters if you never take this first step. When I first started out, I had been producing music for less than a year. I genuinely felt like I had something valuable to share with others, but I couldn't bring myself to actually do it. Because in my mind, everyone out there knew more than I did. To me, everyone was more skilled, more experienced, more qualified. So I told myself subconsciously that nobody could benefit from what I knew. But looking back, I think I was just protecting myself from the embarrassment of putting myself out there. It created this feeling of paralysis because I wanted to share what I knew and I was passionate about it. But my mind kept telling me that I wasn't enough to actually do it. But then I remember realizing that if what I knew could even help just one person, then I was willing to look like a fool in front of thousands. That was a cost I could live with, because at the end of the day, helping just one person with something I was truly passionate about meant more to me than the fear of being judged. When you spend years building a skill, it stops feeling special and starts feeling like common sense. So you assume everybody can already do what you can. When I started posting content, I was sharing what I thought were the most basic, simple tips about music production. Things I assumed everyone already knew. Surprisingly, those ended up being my best performing videos because there were thousands of beginners who had no idea about any of it. What was so obvious to me was genuinely useful to them. And what most people get wrong about expertise is that it's something you have to earn before you're even allowed to share anything. They're waiting to become an expert, they're waiting for that perfect moment, but obviously that perfect moment never comes. Expertise isn't a starting point, it's a direction you're gonna keep moving in for the rest of your life. It's built over time through the act of repetition and sharing itself. Trust me when I say that you don't need a decade of experience, you just need to be a few steps ahead of the person you're trying to help. With the skills you already have right now, whether it's AI, business, sports, cooking, whatever it may be, you can already help thousands of people. And when you start, you gain confidence. You begin to understand what the people you're helping actually need. And you start to see how your skills and your content can change their lives. And that's what builds authority over time. So my fear of not knowing enough was just holding me back, and it turns out that what I knew was more than enough. That leap is eventually what took Francesco and I to generate over $12,000 a month in net revenue. But I was only able to find out by starting. So think about what you already know and ask yourself a very simple question. Who is just a few steps behind me? Because I guarantee that that person exists. And the only thing standing between them and your skills is you deciding to share them. So imagine for a second the moment you stop dismissing what you know. You're looking at your experience, your skills, everything you've learned and everything you've been through, and start seeing that for what it actually is. Something genuinely valuable, enough knowledge that could actually change somebody else's life. Now, it doesn't always have to be this extreme. It can also be just tips that help people do small things. But still, it's enough knowledge to help somebody else. How good does that sound? So that's step one. Before anything else, you need to recognize the value of what you already know and commit to sharing it. Because your skills, whatever they might be, and no matter how ordinary they might feel to you, have the power to impact someone else's life positively. Once you have this mindset in place, you're ready for the next question. How do you actually get those skills out into the world? All right, step two, sharing your skills through content, because recognizing the value of your skills is only the beginning. Now you need to get them out into the world. Most people with valuable skills never share them beyond their immediate circle. They talk to a few friends, maybe help a colleague here and there, and they think that that's enough. And those skills stay invisible. They never reach the people who actually need them. And what most people don't realize is that content is the most powerful vehicle to get your skills out into the world. It's free, it's scalable, and every video you publish becomes a permanent asset that works for you around the clock. It keeps building views, it keeps building trust long after you've stopped filming your video. If you want your skills to stay a hobby, that's completely fine. But if you want them to become a sustainable income, then content is the single most important step between where you are now and that reality. When I first started creating content, everything felt so difficult all the time. I was constantly afraid of being judged, and I never felt comfortable enough to actually share what I was creating with others, which, looking back, was just fear trying to keep me in a comfortable little space. Practically speaking, I had no idea what I was doing. I was recording my audio through shitty headphones. My setup was horrible. I was making countless mistakes, and I can't even begin to tell you how much time I wasted making content when I started. It felt super uncomfortable, embarrassing, cringe, whatever you want to call it. But I remember reading a comment from someone who told me that my video had genuinely helped him. And in that moment, it was all worth it for me. The cringe, the bad audio, the fear of being judged, every bit of it. Because in that moment, I realized I was able to help one person with something I was truly passionate about. And that was enough of a reason for me to keep going. Most people never build anything from their skills for three reasons. First, the discomfort of putting yourself out there. Filming yourself and talking to a camera feels so strange, and watching yourself back feels even worse. And then when you know that people on top of that are watching what you're making, it's just super difficult. But that fear alone is what stops most people before even giving it a shot. Second, the equipment myth. People think that you need a super professional setup to get started, when in reality, that's not true. You just need a camera or an iPhone, a decent microphone like this one that costs $100, and a computer to edit your video. We started with the shittiest setup with whatever we had and improved it over time. Third point is that people give up too early. They post a couple videos, get almost no views, and give up almost instantly. What they don't realize is that in that early period when almost no one is watching, that's when you really build the foundation of your content. Because you have to see every video that you post as a data point. You learn what your audience responds to, you get better at communicating what you know, and slowly your channel starts taking shape. I'm in this exact position right now with this very channel. Just starting out this new project, and I know that the first videos won't get many views, probably, but I'm gonna try my best not to get discouraged by that and just see it as a step forward towards the reality that I want to build. Here's what actually made the difference for me. For a long time, I was posting content hoping that it would perform. The moment things shifted is when my mindset changed. When I stopped making content for the sake of getting views and for, the hopes of a video blowing up, but rather to actually provide value to others, having this real desire to help somebody else out there. When you start creating from that mental place, consistency stops being a struggle. You're not trying to show up for an algorithm, you're showing up to try to help others who need what you know. And as a result, your quality improves too. You stop being so focused on the outcome and actually start enjoying the process of making content. So start simple and show up with consistency. Experiment in the beginning and try to understand what resonates with both you and your audience. So stop for a second and think about what it feels like the day you stop overthinking it. You just upload a new video and you avoid sitting on it for the next 2 weeks wondering if it was good enough. You made it, you shared it, and you moved on to the next one. A few days later, the first comments start coming in. Someone tells you that they tried what you taught and it actually worked. Someone else says that they've been looking for this information for months. Your subscriber count is climbing slowly but steadily, and you start to see that what you're building now will still work for you years down the line. So that's step 2. Content is the vehicle that gets your skills in front of the world. It takes time, it takes consistency, and it takes showing up even when nobody is watching at first. But when you do, something really powerful happens. You start building an audience that trusts you, an audience that starts to see you as the person that can help them improve their lives. And once that foundation is in place, you're ready for the part where it all starts to pay off. This is where everything you've built actually becomes a business. Most people who manage to build an audience never fully capitalize on it. They've put in months, sometimes years of consistent work. They have people who trust them, who follow them, who genuinely value what they share. And then they either do nothing with it or they try to monetize without really understanding what their audience actually needs. So they end up leaving an enormous amount of money on the table. Or they give up entirely, convincing themselves that content cannot lead to building a real business, when the truth is that they're just missing the last step. By this point, you've already done the hard work. You've built an audience by providing value to others. All that's left is understanding what your audience actually needs and packaging that into something they'll pay for. For a long time, the audience was there, but the money wasn't. I knew digital products and online communities were possibilities, but I didn't really know what would work the best for the audience I had built. And one of the biggest mistakes I made early on was assuming that everybody in my audience was the same. But obviously they weren't. Some were complete beginners who needed foundational guidance. Others were more advanced and wanted to go deeper. Some wanted a community, others wanted one-on-one support. Everybody had different needs. And that created real frustration because I was putting in so much time and effort into making content that ultimately never resulted in any money. I started losing hope and I started questioning whether any of this was actually worth it. So I started looking at the comments, the messages, the feedback from my audience very differently. Not just as feedback, but also as a map. It led me to understanding my audience on a whole different level. And every struggle that my audience was facing was essentially a product I hadn't built yet. And once I started seeing my audience not just as this big group, but as individuals, each with their own specific needs, everything started to make a lot more sense. Most people fail to monetize their audience for a simple reason. They don't understand it well enough. They haven't spent enough time with the people they've built a following with. They haven't looked at the data. They don't know what their audience is actually struggling with, what they want, what they're willing to pay for. And even the ones who do understand their audience tend to fall short at the next step, which is that you need to create an offer that speaks to your audience on an emotional level. Knowing what someone needs and packaging it into something they're actually willing to spend money for are two completely different things. So here's what you actually need to do, and it comes down to 3 essential things. First, deeply understand the needs of your audience. Not what you assume they need, what they actually struggle with. Spend time with them, read the comments, ask them questions, look at the data. And remember that everyone in your audience is different. There will be multiple needs, and that's a good thing. Second, create a product or service that actually solves those needs. A course, a community, a coaching offer, a digital product, whatever format makes the most sense for the problem you're solving. Third, present it in a way that makes it the obvious choice. Your offer needs to speak to the person you're trying to help on an emotional level so that when they see it, it feels like the obvious choice for them. So one morning, you wake up and the first thing that you see is that notification on your phone, that little dopamine hit. New sales came in overnight from people you've never met, perhaps in countries you've never even visited, who actually bought something that you created from your own skill and passion. And you know that every single one of those people is genuinely going to be helped by the product you created. You're no longer stuck in a routine that doesn't belong to you. You spend your days doing what you love, building your skills, sharing them through content, and creating products that actually help the people who follow you. So that's step 3. Once you understand what your audience needs and package it into the right offer, everything you've built starts working together. Every piece of content becomes an asset and a sales engine. The audience you've grown, the trust you've earned, it all compounds. And what started as a passion becomes a profitable business that works for you around the clock. If you made it to this point, you have the complete simplified roadmap. 3 simple steps. Acquire and develop your skill, share it through content, and turn it into an offer. That's exactly how Francesco and I built our music production business that now generates over $148,000 per year in net revenue. That's over $12,000 a month with margins above 80%, doing work that we're actually passionate about on our own terms. This isn't a shortcut, it won't happen overnight, but if you're willing to put in the work, to show up consistently, and to provide value to others, there has never been a better time to start than today. And if you want our help figuring out where to start, we'd love to have a conversation with you. We work directly with people who want to turn their skills into a profitable digital business. We'll sit down with you, understand your situation, and put together a little roadmap to get you started at no cost at all for you. Click the first link in the description to book a free consultation. It'll take 2 minutes, and I'll see you in the next video.